one of the things which got confused a lot of researchers, because there are 4 sargas in the Valmiki Ramayana, Kanda, 39, 40, 41, and 42, which is mentioning places where Sita is to be searched. This is not the place where actually Sita is searched. The Sugriva is just mentioning that these are the places you can go and search. But there is no evidence in Ramayana that the Vanaras actually went there. It is just an instruction for the Vanaras to go and search. And this entire 4 sargas are late addition. For example, Sarga 39 talks about eastern locations, and when I trace, it goes to Indonesia. Sarga 40 talks about southern location, it reach up to Kerala, and 41 reach westward up to Pakistan, and Sarga 42 northward up to Siberia. But it's a very much large territory, but unfortunately this entire sargas, 4 of the sargas are late sargas, because all the locations are mentioned in a haphazard way. So this will be the 4th talk in this auspicious forum, and I really thank the Sangam organizers for arranging these kind of talks, which are very essential for our current period, to bring in the perspective of history from the side of Indian researchers. So I had this track. There was some kind of technical issues, because of which I will be having my video in the mobile and also the presentation through the laptop. So, okay. Geography of Ramayana is the book that has been released in this year, January. And if you look at the genre of the book, it's a Aitihasic geochronology, or classified in the Amazon or other bookstores as history or geography, etc. Because there is no actual classification of geochronology. Is not a very focused subject. So because of that, it is the right to be rightly classified as Aitihasic geochronology, because both geography and chronology are entwined and interrelated. And of course, in the bookstores, it is classified as history and geography, and it's available in all over the world through Amazon, Amazon India, in UK, USA, etc. And in India, you can get it from Flipkart, Amazon, Notion Press, etc. And as a ebooks in Amazon Kindle, Google Play Store, iBooks, or other digital bookstores. And what is unique about this book is this is one of its kind, which combined analysis of Rigveda and Ramayana. I could not see much books in this similar kind of format, where both Ramayana and Rigveda are compared. And there are a lot many books which compare Ramayana and Mahabharata, and this is one of these kind of books. But this is the only book which have a joint combined analysis of Rigveda, Ramayana, and Mahabharata, all 3 together. And another point is that the entire 606 sargas and 18,670 slokas in Valmiki Ramayana Critical Edition is analyzed in this book. And it contains geography maps of all places mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana. So it's like there are two tasks, which is like map creation, which is in itself difficult, like book creation, and also analysis of Sanskrit slokas in the critical edition, and then combining both these together. And again, the links of Ramayana geography with the Rigvedic geography and Mahabharata geography is done in this book. So you can see it's a continuum. And because of this, because it is connecting between the Rigvedic geography that predates Ramayana geography, and also the Mahabharata geography that succeeds it. It forms a continuum, and many riddles of Ramayana geography is resolved just because of this cross comparison. So these are the important highlights. And I am writing these books as a trilogy. So you have Rivers of Rigveda in the last year, and Geography of Ramayana this year. And finally, the next book, I am currently writing the book. It is the Geography of Mahabharata, and planning to be released on January of next year. All the 3 books, the previous books, are released on January, so I'm just trying to have it released next year, January. So that's overall about the trilogy part of it, and this is the second book in the trilogy. If you go further, people may be wondering why there is need of a comparison between Rig Veda and Ramayana. Is there any connection linked between Rig Veda and Ramayana? So this is the fundamental question many people have asked, even about this book when I have in different forums. So that's why I have shown here the mandala chronology of Rig Veda, which is the subject of my first book, Rivers of Rig Veda. And in this, you will be able to see one important part. That is, if you look at the 10th mandala, you have Shantanu and Devapi because they are contemporary, mentioned as contemporaries in the 10th mandala. And you can see Rama also. Rama is also a contemporary in the 10th mandala of like Rig Veda. So both the kings, Shantanu and Rama, are mentioned as contemporary kings in the 10th mandala of Rig Veda. So just to give a kind of a refresher on the Rig Veda, because it is mentioned elaborately in the book Rivers of Rig Veda, but it's very important for the Ramayana geography study. In the Rig Veda, you have 10 mandalas, and the mandalas are not chronologically the same as the number. So, for example, the first mandala is not the oldest mandala; it is somewhere in the middle, with its own divisions like early, middle, and late, and general. So, 4 divisions, chronological division for the first mandala. So, first mandala is not the oldest mandala. So, the oldest mandala is the 6th mandala. Then comes the 3rd, then 7th. So, these are considered as the early family mandalas. And then comes the 4th and the 2nd, called the late family mandalas. And the 4th, 2nd, and the 5th are called the late family mandalas. And then the late mandalas, which are including the late family mandala, that is 5th mandala, 5, 8, 9, and 10 are the late mandalas. So this is how the chronology of Rig Veda is sequenced. And 8, 9, and 10, you can see that the last 3 mandalas follow the numerical sequence. So 8, 9, and 10 are the chronologically the oldest mandalas, like that. So this is how the Rigvedic chronology is laid out. And in the 6th mandala, you have the Bharadwaja, early Bharadwaja rishis. And in the 3rd mandala is dominated by Vishwamitra, and the 7th is dominated by Vasishta. But the Vishwamitra and Vasishta of the early Rigvedic period, they were contemporaries, and they were advisors to Sudas. That is the biggest or the most famous king of Rigveda, who has got a kind of an empire-like territory from Yamuna in the east to India-Pakistan border, that is Parishni River, the Ravi River in the Indo-Pak border. So till that, the territory of Sudas. So he is one of the most powerful king, and he was an ancestor of Panchalas. So that is the kind of connection, even with the Mahabharata. So in Mahabharata, the Panchalas are very famous as the Panchali comes from Panchala. She was the wife of the Pandavas. So the Sudas, the Rigvedic king Sudas is an ancestor of the Panchala. So he was the contemporary king during the 3rd and 7th mandala. More or less, they are contemporary to the period of Sudas, even though there are 2 mandalas from Vishwamitra and Vasishta. So this is the period of early Rigveda. And Sudas, you can see the king Sudas' ancestor Divodasa. So both are considered as ancestors of the Panchalas. And then Sudas' descendant Sahadeva, and Sahadeva's descendant Somaka. So all these 5 kings were considered as you can say ancestors of the Panchala kings. And Sahadeva and Somaka are in the middle Rigvedic period. Somaka was the ruling king during the 4th mandala, where the priestly class was dominated by Vamadeva Gautama. And then you have Krisamada, and then Atri, the 5th mandala, that is the youngest family mandala. And then the 8th mandala is a mixture of all the different authors. So like that. And then the 9th mandala is a Soma mandala, where all the hymns related to Soma are collected together into 9. So you have 10th mandala, which is the last and final mandala, where you have the kings like Shantanu and Rama are mentioned. Another important point, which I have to clarify because I could not in previous talks about the book. We have many individuals who bear the name of ancient rishis. Like there is a late Rigvedic Vasishta, late Rigvedic Vishwamitra, late Rigvedic Bharadwaja and late Rigvedic Atri, Ramaja Madagniya, etc. All of them are like late Rigvedic, and they are individuals who contributed suktas to the 10th mandala of the Rigveda. So definitely they are totally different from the Vishwamitra and Vasishtha, who were the advisors of the early Rigvedic ring Sudas. So this is an important differentiation we need to understand to understand the Ramayana chronology and Ramayana geography. So the sages who were contemporary to Sri Rama in Ayodhya, they were not the Vasishtha or Vishwamitra of the during the lifetime of Sudas, who is a very old ancient king in the early Rigvedic period. There were poets who were contributing suktas in the 10th mandala bearing these names. So there are different theories about why they have the same names. One is that these older Vishwamitra and Vasishtha were very famous, so that poets very unrelated to them started using them as pen names. Second one is they are direct descendants of the old Vishwamitra and Vasishtha. And typically in a family you will have names repeating. Like for example, in the Persian kings you have the names like Cyrus and Cambyses get repeated many times, not one or two or more, three more times repeated in the generation with a gap of 100 or 200 or even 1000 years. So similar thing can also happen in India. So some of the names get repeated. The famous ancestor name is adopted by a descendant. So these are the kind of historicity of the late Rigvedic Vishwamitra and Vasishtha and Bharadwaja, Atri, Ramaja Madagnya, that is Parashurama, all these people who are mentioned as contemporary to Sri Rama's lifetime. So this much clarification is required so that I can delve into the book. So here is the same slide with absolute chronology, wherein this is based on Srikant Talagiri's absolute chronology of the Rigvedic mandalas based on his extensive studies connecting with the multiple sources like the Rigveda, Avesta, and Mitanni records, Indo-European language, all these linguistic studies. So this is like 90% the similar chronology. I have only have a difference at the terminal point of the 10th mandala. So in the early Rigvedic period, 3300 BC to 2600 BC, and then coinciding with the early Harappan period, and then a middle Rigvedic period, that is 2600, middle Rigvedic and late Rigvedic period, that is 2600 to 1900 BC, and coinciding with the mature Harappan period. And the late Rigvedic, the late Harappan period is the Kurukshetra war kind of period where the Kurukshetra war everything happened. So this is the kind of chronology that is a middle. It's not having any exaggeration. We're perfectly aligned with the archaeological records and totally like synchronous with archaeological findings in all over the India. So this is the chronology that is followed in the book. And the only difference between Talagiri's chronology and this one is Talagiri placed the 10th mandala at 1400 BC. I place it 1900 BC. So since I am placing the 10th mandala at 1900 BC, Rama and Shantanu contemporary to 10th mandala become dated to 1900 BC. That is around 1950 to 1850 BC in that 100-year bracket. And then Kurukshetra automatically is in the 1793 BC based on two different independent sources. One is Ashok Bhatnagar astronomy based date 1793 BC. Another Sanjay Manjul's archaeology based date range of 1700 BC to 1800 BC. So this is how the chronology is getting added up. Now comes to the next question: what is the connecting link between this Mahabharata and Ramayana? So I have represented it as the cover page of my books. So is there any connection between Mahabharata and Ramayana, especially the chronological, geographical connecting links? So yes, the answer is yes. So you may be surprised. Not many people know it. The Hastinapura, Kurujangala, and Panchala are all mentioned in Ramayana. So these are all very prominent places of Mahabharata. Hastinapura is the capital of Kurus. The Pandavas lived there. Kauravas lived there. Panchala is the place where Panchali, the wife of Pandavas, came, and Kurujangala is the place where the Pandavas were asked to go and found a new kingdom. It was the barren land at that time. So these are all well known, and people will be surprised. These all places are mentioned in the Ramayana as contemporary to Sri Rama. So it has got a lot of consequences. So, for example, when this particular map, what I'm showing is the messengers of Ayodhya. When Dasharatha died, they wanted to bring back Bharata, so they went to Kekeya in the western country between Gandhara and Madhya Desha in Pakistan currently. So the Kosala, from Kosala to, that is Ayodhya, to Girivaraja, the capital of Kekai, they went. So they passed through Hastinapura. They crossed Ganga at Hastinapura, and then they passed to Kurujangala. I mean, they passed through Panchala, which is situated inside Kurujangala. So this is a slight different from the like what you see in the Kurukshetra war period, where Panchala war somewhere to the east of Ganga. So this is a slight migration that has happened between the Rama era and the Pandava era. So earlier the Panchalas were living in the Kurujangala region. So this entire thing is captured in Ramayana. This entire, including the stages of migration of the Panchala, everything is captured in the Ramayana. So this is having high significance. Like I mentioned, Rama is mentioned as a king in 10th mandala of Rigveda. So many people say, no, that can be some other Rama. So here this is the answer for that people who ask such questions. See, it's not just because Rama is mentioned in the 10th mandala that he is a contemporary to 10th mandala. Even the word Kuru is a late Rigvedic term. Kuru means to do. So the early Rigvedic term for Kuru is Krunu. So you see Krunu as a word for action in the early and middle Rigvedic period, and Kuru as the word for action in the late Rigvedic period. And another point is all the place names like Kurujangala and Kurukshetra are established by King Kuru, because King Kuru came to Kurukshetra, that is the region it was known as Varaprithvi in the Rigvedic period. He came back to this region because his ancestors were living in that Varaprithvi region between the Shadwadi and Saraswati, that is the northern Haryana region. That was the ancestral place for Kuru. Because of fight with Sudas, the Kuru's ancestors have to flee and migrate westward to Sindhu region. And from there, when this condition become favorable, they return back. And then Kuru, after returning back, he renamed that entire region as Kurukshetra. He named it after him. And similarly, the region to the south of Kurukshetra is Kurujangala. So these two names are actually later to King Kuru. And since these two names, that is Kurujangala is contemporary to Sri Rama, automatically it means Sri Rama is later to King Kuru. And this is the chronological significance, because of which Sri Rama automatically becomes a late Rigvedic king. So independent of the reference of Rama in 10th mandala of Rigveda, we still get Rama as a late Rigvedic king in the that is in like somewhat closer to 1900 BC. So this is an important, and this is just one example. I have in the book I have mentioned more than a dozen of different interconnection between Ramayana and Rigveda, Ramayana and Mahabharata, etc. And then another important point I need to note before we delve deep into the geography is some of the events happened in the early Rigvedic period. I mentioned the ancestors of Kuru had a fight with Sudas when he was dominating and increasing his power. Almost many other clans have to flee from the Varaprithvi region. The Anavas are one of them. In the Puranas we call them as Asuras or Daitya Danavas. So they have to flee, and cousin of Sudas, that is Samvarana, that is another Bharata king Samvarana, who is a ancestor of Kuru. All these people have to vacate the Varaprithvi region. They were pushed away to the west of Parushni, that is the Indo-Pakistan border. And then the Samvarana have again had a battle with Sudas in the Battle of 10 King. One of the king was in the Battle of 10 kings who fought with Sudas. One of them was Samvarana. He is mentioned as Puru of scornful speech. And his friend was the Kavi Chayamana, that is a Anava king. He is mentioned as Shukracharya and some like that in the Puranas. So these are historical personalities, but Puranas have made them into a kind of a Puranic personalities. So of this particular Samvarana, they because of the Battle of 10 King, they also again they got defeated. already defeated in Vara Prithvi, and again Battle of 10 Kings Udas defeated them. So they migrated further westward and they lived in Sindhu region. And there is a western Sarayu, which is a tributary of Sindhu. So in that region they were living, and the western Sarayu was the place where the western branch of the Ikshvakus were there. They are called Trikshis in Rigveda. So Trikshis and the Bharata kings are allied to Samvarana. All these people have made an alliance. Even so, that is called the Rigvedic Triple Alliance. And because of the intermixing of Bharatas and the Ikshvakus in the Rigvedic Sarayu Sindhu region, that is currently in the Pakistan. The Sarayu River, the Rigvedic Sarayu River is the western Sarayu, called Haro River in Pakistan. So this region, they got an intermixture, and the result of the intermixing is the Kuru clan. And that Kuru clan is the clan in which Pandavas and Kauravas were born. And the architect of this alliance is Vasishtha. So that is why you see Vasishtha's descendants like Vyasa were associated with the Kurus like Pandavas and Kauravas. Similarly, another descendant of the early Rigvedic Vasishtha, that is the late Rigvedic Vasishtha, is similarly having an association with Dasharatha and Rama. So these are all because of that. And you have in the western Ikshaku, they are called Trikshis, and Garuda. That is why Garuda is called Takshya. He is a western Ikshaku. That is why he is called Takshya. And then some of the people who interacted with Rama, Jatayu, they were all western Ikshaku kings of Trikshis or Takshya. So somehow they are remotely related to Sri Rama. That is why in one of the verses you see Jatayu mentioned he is a relative of Sri Rama. That is because of this very kinship between the eastern and western Ikshakus. And in the eastern, so some of these like western Ikshakus, familiar of the most famous of them were the Tarshadasya and Purukutsa. They were mentioned in the Rigveda. And Garuda and Jatayu, Sampati, all these people are western Ikshakus mentioned in the Ramayana. And similarly, there is an eastern Ikshakus. So they were living on the banks of Saraswati, and starting with like Sagara was one of the big king who was living on the banks of Saraswati, and he was dominating even the southern sea where the Saraswati joins. That is the Gujarat area, Gujarat Maharashtra sea area. That is why the sea is called Sagara, because Sagara dominated the sea. So that is called Sagara. So this Sagara was very much active in the southern course of Saraswati, and also the seashore and the ocean, the southern ocean. So when I say southern ocean, not to confuse with the ocean to the south of Kanyakumari. As far as Rigveda is concerned, the southern ocean is the ocean where Saraswati and Sindhu drains. That is the Ran of Kutch, Gujarat, the local seas in Gujarat, and to some extent the sea surrounding the Narmada river mouth. All these are southern ocean. Starting with the grandson of Sagara, Amshuman, they started migrating to the east. So Amshuman is the grandson of Sagara, and as he migrated, he renamed the Yamuna river as Amshumati. That is the why Yamuna has got a synonym called Amshumati. And then his son Dilipa has moved further eastward, and Bhagiratha finally reached the Ganga region. That is why we have a lot of stories associated with Bhagiratha and Ganga, that Bhagiratha brought Ganga from heaven. So these are all Puranic stories of the historical event that Bhagiratha finally reached and established in the Ganga region. And then you have Kakusta and Raghu, and finally Aja, Dasharatha and Rama established on the Sarayu, eastern Sarayu river. They just renamed a river on one of the prominent tributary of Ganga as Sarayu river, and that became the eastern Sarayu. And they established Ayodhya city there, and that is the Ayodhya that we now know. And what this means is that the Ayodhya city is a very late, young city compared to the cities in the Saraswati region. And this is exactly, you can see in the archaeological record, where Birana and Rakigari, all these cities on the banks of Saraswati and Rishabdwadi in Haryana are 8,000, 7,000, 4,000, 6,000 years old. Whereas Ayodhya city, now current accepted archaeological date, the oldest one is 1800 BC. Very close to whatever time I am saying Rama was living. And Kashi is another city which is in 2000 BC, is the oldest we get. So eastern cities are always younger in archaeological age. So many people question that it is because archaeology have not discovered anything, but they should know that archaeologists have no problem in getting any cities older in Haryana region, but somehow they are not getting anything older in the eastern Uttar Pradesh, the Ayodhya, Kashi. Even go Bihar, you have 1,200, 1,500 BC bronze age cities. We get only that much dates for the cities. So it's not just like random, just one-off situation of one city or one settlement or one archaeological site. There is a well-established gradient, chronological gradient between the archaeological sites from Saraswati from Saraswati onwards to the eastwards. The oldest cities are always found in Saraswati and the youngest in the east, further eastward. And similarly, if you go westward from Saraswati, the oldest cities are away from Saraswati in the west. So, for example, just like Kashi in Uttar Pradesh, you have Shodgai, another archaeological site in Afghanistan, which is again 2000 BC. But you get 8,000 BC, 6,000 BC extra on Saraswati. So you have there is a migration from Saraswati to westward, that is out of India theory of Srikant Talagiri. And similarly, there is a migration of people from Saraswati to eastward, which is recorded in Ramayana and Mahabharata. Now we move to the proper geographical information. So if you look at the Rigvedic versus Aidihasic geography, this is like a sum total of all the analysis I have done compared with Rigveda, Ramayana and Mahabharata. So the Rigvedic geography, you can see the slightly yellowish color in the left hand side, and there was movement to the east and it went up to Bihar, like Magadha and all, and there was movement to south, that is towards this from Uttar Pradesh to Madhya Pradesh or from Haryana to Rajasthan, like that. And then finally we got this, the larger circle is the Aidihasic geography. This is the main geographical region where the events in the Ramayana and Mahabharata unfolded. And there are three major rivers in this region, that is Saraswati, Sindhu and Narmada. So that is why, see, now we use a term called Harappan civilization. Harappa is a small city somewhere here where the mouse cursor is there. But and then you have a Saraswati Sindhu civilization, SSC civilization. Earlier, after an expanded term of Harappan civilization. Again, Saraswati and Sindhu itself is not enough for defining the civilization, because currently we know that it is extended to the Narmada river. Whatever we call Harappan civilization or IVC or Sindhu Saraswati civilization extended to the mouth of Narmada river also, and a little more southward in the Maharashtra. Like this is the kind of situation that we are. Many newly discovered lands, that is between the geography that you see in the Ramayana versus what you see in the Mahabharata. You have some of the places like in the south, like Shurparaga or Mahendra Mountains, they are mentioned as newly discovered land. So it is actually mentioned as you can say it's mentioned as a lands where the Parashurama went. Now that is it's a basically if you look at the analysis, this movement of Parashurama, what he is basically saying is all the lands that is well known, that is whatever he has conquered, he has handed over to Kashyapa, and he has to go to a place which is not part of the land he has conquered. So basically it means that every other land was known, and wherever Parashurama is now going newly, that is still unexplored. So there are two instances. In one instance, this particular land where Parashurama went is mentioned as the Mahendra Mountains, that is the Eastern Ghats in Orissa. And in another instance, the same story repeated, but here it says Parashurama has discovered a new land, that is Shurparaga, that is the western coast of Maharashtra. So these two Aitihiyams, these two narratives are because the Bhargava sages expanded to the southwards, and they have in the east they have expanded to the coastal Orissa, and in the west they have expanded to the coastal Maharashtra. So this also has a context for anybody who is very much meticulous in historical and geographical analysis, that this is the kind of geographical and historical events and migration that was the contemporary to the Rama and the Pandavas. This context is required so that you can know in the Ramayana geography or Mahabharata geography what are the kind of geographies which are really contemporary to Rama and the Pandavas, and what are the things chronology they added later because of the evolution of Mahabharata or Ramayana. Because both the texts have unlike Rigveda means it was completely frozen by the time the 10th mandala is created. That is around 1900 BC, and there was no way anybody can add or delete anything from Rigveda after that frozen period of its freeze. Whereas in case of Mahabharata and Ramayana, it was similar to Rigveda, and a lot of ancient material contemporary to Rama and Pandavas were added into it. But after that, the text evolved even in the Sunga period, Maurya Sunga period. So a lot of elements from the Maurya Sunga period got added into this text. So there are a lot of geographies which are actually added later. And the only way to identify which is later is to understand this particular context. Now the book, there are certain information in the Balakanda, wherein you get a kind of, see, something that is missing out in the Rigveda is a kind of Vishwamitra conquering Kikatas. This is mentioned as the last activity of Vishwamitra in the Rigveda. And we don't know what happened. But in the Mahabharata and Ramayana, you can see the consequences of it. So the Kikatas who were living in the between the Yamuna and the Ganga region, they migrated and transformed into the Magadhas in the Bihar. So in the Ramayana, you can see a lot of the traces of this particular Kikata migration, where the ancient Magadha kings were mentioned. And when you look at the map, these cities, Mahodaya, Kaushambi, Dharmaranya, and Girivraja, the 4 cities related to the ancestors of the Magadhas, they fall in line in the migration trail of the Kikatas. Mahodaya is to the somewhat in the Uttar Pradesh on the Ganga river, and Kaushambi is in Kosam. It is their same name, retains current name, and Dharmaranya is nothing but Gaya, that is the sacred place Gaya, and Girivraja is the Rajgir, that is the earlier capital of Magadha until it was turned into Padaliputra by the Mauryan kings. So this, and you can see here the Girivraja, the name, how it comes, because this city is surrounded by mountains. So that mountains you can see very clearly. And these mountains are described in Mahabharata, why Krishna and Arjuna and Bhima went to kill Jarasandha. That time these mountains are described. So in the map, you can see it very clearly. And it also mentioned about a new kingdom, relatively new kingdom called Kanyagubja. So there is the story Vishwamitra narrated to Sri Rama about Kanyagubja, how it is formed, etc. So currently it is known as Kanauj in Uttar Pradesh. And you have the Vishwamitra talks about the origin of Sarayu river, that is the eastern Sarayu where the Ayodhya of Sri Rama is located. So it is very close to Manasa Saras, that is Manasarovar Kailas region. And that is the reason why it is called Sarayu, because it is originating in a lake, or it's actually very close to a lake. Probably during the ancient period, the Manas lake was bigger and Sarayu was exactly coming from the lake itself. But now it is slightly different. If you can see the map. And Shadadru also coming from the lake. So that is why Shadadru can also be synonymously called Sarayu, which I have hinted in my first book, Rivers of Rigveda. So Saraswati, Sarayu, in Shadadru, Sarayu, all these have a kind of connection with the lakes. And then again, because Balakanda of Ramayana is completely focused on Vishwamitra and travel of Rama and Lakshmana with Vishwamitra. So Vishwamitra talks about Kaushiki river. So again, this is another very important data point for the migration, because there are 3 branches of Bharatas, that is Kushikas, then Panchalas, and the Bharata Kuru, the Kuru branch of the Bharatas. However, Kushikas were the first to migrate to Ganga, and that is why the Ganga was called Jannavi, because Jannu was an ancestor of Vishwamitra, who is a part of the Kushika lineage. And since they were the first to migrate to the east from Saraswati to Ganga, by the time of Rama era, they were reached as far as the Bihar, and the easternmost river they named it for themselves. The Kushikas named the easternmost river discovered, that is in the Bihar. They named it for themselves. That becomes the Kaushiki river. That is why it is called Kaushiki. And Ramayana, very interesting, called the Kaushiki river as the sister of Vishwamitra. So you may be thinking, what is, I mean, it's a poetic narrative, but there is a significance. Because in Rigveda, similarly, Vishwamitra went westwards, and then Shatadru and Vipasha, that is Satlaj and Bias, are called sisters of Vishwamitra. So the Ramayana poet is inspired by the Rigvedic poet, where the Vishwamitra calling Bias and Satlaj in Punjab as sisters of Vishwamitra. Just figuratively, he called these rivers as sisters. So in the Ramayana era, during when the Kushikas migrated to the easternmost point and named the easternmost river in Bihar as, that is Koshi currently, as Kaushika, the Ramayana poet interestingly says that Kaushiki river is a sister of Vishwamitra. So now another important point is I mentioned about the migration of the Sagaras, that is the eastern Ikshwakus, the Sagara lineage from the Saraswati region. So this is the migration, like you can see Sagara and his son Asamanja, both are connected with the Sarayu, that is the ancestral Sarayu of the Saraswati. It is same as synonymous with Saraswati. And from there they migrated, and Amshumat, you can see Amshuma and Amshumat is connected with the Yamuna, Amshumati river. And then Dilipa, there is another river between Amshumati, there is Yamuna and Ganga called Ikshumati. Dilipa is associated. Then Bhagirath with Ganga. Then Kakusta with Gomati, and Rekhu or Aja and Dasharatha and Rama with Sarayu. This is how they migrated. Now, this is the map of Rama's travel with the Vishwamitra. So you can see from Ayodhya, he starts, and slowly he have the Bala Adibala, that is mantra recital, and along Sarayu he goes to Kamasrama, and then he reaches the Tataka, that is the Ara in Bihar, and finally Siddhasrama, and then through Shona river he goes northward, and he goes to this Vishala is Vaishali, and then Gautama Halyasrama, and then finally to Mithila. These are the kind of maps you can see. And in the narrative of Vishwamitra, there is a Vishwamitra's tapas and all the, these are the places related to Vishwamitra. Pushkara Lake, he did tapas in Pushkara Lake, all these places. So you can see a kind of a historical migration of the Kosala Janavada into the Dakshina Kosala. That is, Dakshina Kosala was a historical, kingdom when these Mauryan kings were ruling, and Mauryans defeated the Dakshina Kosala and become part of the Magadha Empire. So you can see that glimpse of that migration in Ramayana. And then here is Dasharatha's travel from Ayodhya to Mithila for attending the marriage of Sri Rama. So you can see how the different paths they have taken for reaching Mithila. That is, you can see here. And then very important, like in the Brahmanas, Shadapada Brahmanas, etc. You see mention of Sadanira as a boundary between Kosala and Videha. So as per Shadapada Brahmana, this Videga Madhava is a king who, along with the Gautama sages, migrated from Kurukshetra Saraswati region to the Mithila region and established the Videha Janapata. So it is all mentioned in the Shadapada Brahmana. And this Janaka and Janaka, the king of Videha, is a very young, very new kingdom actually. That is why it is currently archaeologists have not find any good record of ancient record of Mithila, which is at 900 BC or 1800 BC. But the current oldest is around 1500 BC, etc. That is because one of the possible reason I can identify is that Mithila is just a very new territory established, so there will not be much there will not be any big city there in the Mithila. And Sri Rama has married Sita from this particular region of the Mithila region. So it is possible that Mithila, there was a small settlement which is contemporary to Sri Rama, and Janaka was ruling that place, and Sita was a princess in that region. So there is a possible contemporaneous of all these things. But in archaeology, you don't get any kind of ancient sites in Mithila. Still now, we have not got anything with 1800 BC or 1900 BC. But in Ayodhya, we do have. So possibility is because a new settlement, which is just established for some 10 or 50 or 100 years and just disappear, then it will not give any trace. It could be one reason, but it could be other. There could be other reasons, maybe the older location of Mithila was different, and later people migrated. They have identified Mithila with a newer location, which is recorded in the archaeology. So there are different possibilities. So, for example, this Janaka's brothers, Kushathwaja have ruling from Sankasya, which is to the west of Ayodhya, to the surprise of everybody. And Sankasya is well into the archaeological records. There is archaeological evidence for Sankasya. Hence, there is a possibility that the older settlement of Videha was in the Sankasya. So that I have put a theory in my book about that. And this is another surprising thing about Dasharatha and Kaikeyi visiting the Dandakaranya. Many people may not be knowing, because in the narrative, they go to a city called Vaijayanta, which is very close to the Dandakaranya. So maybe this is where the Kaikeyi was the charioteer of Dasharatha, and she rescued Dasharatha. All these things happened. So this could be why Kaikeyi is very familiar with the Dandakaranya. That is why she was asking Rama to go there. I mean, suggesting as a place where Rama can go there when she wanted to banish Rama. So that's another thing. Not because of any good intention, bad intention, but influenced by Manthara, of course. And then this is the most interesting part of Rama's travel from Ayodhya to Chitrakuta. So there are no ambiguity here. Every river name mentioned is traceable, like Vedasruti, Gomati, Syandiga, which is a boundary of Kosala and Kashi. And then Ganga, Sringiveripura and Ganga, and then Bharadwaja Asrama, and then Chitrakuta. Every place is perfectly identifiable in this particular narrative. I'm saying this because subsequently that is not the same case. So, for understanding the geography of Chitrakuta and Panchavadi, we need to know about these two mountains. There are two branches of the Vindhya range. One is Malivat to the northern side and Shuktimat to the southern side. And Dandakaranya is a big forest between these two mountain ranges of Vindhya. The Malivat mountain is normally also called purely Vindhya mountain also. And it is just to the south of the Yamuna river. So you have temples celebrating Vindhya, in this towards very close to Yamuna region, Vindhyavali, Devi, etc. And Shuktimat is a southern branch of the Vindhya ranges. Both are in Madhya Pradesh. And in Uttarakhand, this Malivat and Shuktimat are called Vindhya and Shaivala. So they are both the same pair mountains. And Dandakaranya is between them. And then, as I mentioned in the very beginning, messengers, Dasharatha died. So definitely they need, and Rama was in the forest in Chitrakuta. So Vasishta sent the messengers to fetch Bharata from this Keikaya. So they are, so you can see they are actually Kosala, they are going westward, crossing Ganga and Hastinapura, then finding Panjala in Purijangala. I mentioned that during that time Panjala was in the Purijangala region. And so all these things happened actually. And then they passed through the Panchala, then Kulinga. Kulinga is a territory in the mountainous Himalayan region. The Pandavas also went there during their trek to Himalayas. And they have an interesting mountain called Vishnupada. That is actually the basis for the story about Vamana having his two foots, placing his 2 foots and measuring space, and the third one on Mahabali. So that Vishnupada is because it's actually a mountain. And it is in the Bahlika territory. Bahlika is currently in Punjab, northern Punjab. So Vishnupada, if you would be surprised to see the shape of the Vishnupada mountain. So there are 2 Vishnupada mountains. One is in the Punjab, where these messengers are visiting in the Bahlika region, near to the Pathankot in the Punjab. So it is a shape, you can see the shape of a feet. Another Vishnupada is in Bihar, in Gaya. So you can say there is some kind of historical trace to whatever Vamana has done. 1 feet on 1 feet, second feet, and there are only 2 feet and the third feet on the head of Mahabali. So I mean, the Abraham have been created based on these two mountains: Vishnupada in Punjab, Vishnupada in Bihar, and then finally after seeing Vishnupada, the messengers reached the Kegeya. They have a capital called Girivaraja. So both Magadha and Kegeya have the same name, same capital name, Girivaraja. So this is what you see, right? See the Girivaraja, the capital of Magadha in Bihar, surrounded by mountains. And Girivaraja, the capital of Kegeya, that is a Wagh in Pakistan, again surrounded by mountains. So cities surrounded by mountains are called Girivaraja. So that you have two Girivarajas. The left hand side Kekeya capital and the right hand side Magadha capital. The left hand side in Pakistan, the right hand side in Bihar. And then the Bharata is returning from Kekeya to Kosala. So you can see the return journey again. He goes like this, crossing the different rivers. So you see the names are slightly different. The Rigvedic names are like, for example, Vitasta, Asikni, Parushni, all these names. But in Idihasas, different names are used. Like Haradini is used for Asikni. That is a Daitya river. That is Ramayana used the word Haradini, but in the Mahabharata it is called Chandrabhaga, and now it is called Chenab. And Rigveda used Parushni as a name, and Mahabharata used Iravati as a name. Currently, it is not Ravi. Satlaj, that is Shadadru. Vipash is Bias. All these things. And Jalam River, that is the northernmost river of Kekeya. It is called Shalmali in Ramayana, and it is currently known as Jalam. And in Rigveda, it is known as Vitasta. In Mahabharata, also known as Vitasta. So then, this is how he returns from Kulinga. And there is a kind of yellow-colored this road called Jambu Marga. Jambu Marga is something similar to Uttarabhatha. People only know about Uttarabhatha, which is somewhere to the south. But Jambu Marga is just grazing the Himalayan mountains. So it is a northern path, little bit northern and parallel to Uttarabhatha. So that is Jambu Marga. So he returned through the Jambu Marga and reached the Ayodhya back. So that entire the geographical mapping of the journey of Bharata is in the book. And here the Rama's the moving from Prayaga to Chitrakuta, and this allows us to define the Yojana distance of Yojana and Krosha, because 10 Krosha is mentioned as 2.5 Yojana, and the current distance is 120 kilometers. So using this equation, you know what is Yojana length and what is Krosha length. Contemporary to Rama, because these distances keep on changing as the era changes. And this is the Chitrakuta satellite photo of Chitrakuta, the Kamatgiri, you can see. And the most important part is the Asma Mandala. That is the place where Rama lived for 10 years. The entire 14 years, the total 10 years he spent in this region, but very less is mentioned in Ramayana about this region. So I have identified that this is actually a series of asramas located on the Satna river, which is also known as Tamasa river. Like Valpigia asrama was its one end, where the Tamasa river joined the Ganga, and where it originates, the source point Sudishna asrama is there. So between Sudishna asrama and Valpigia asrama, there are so many asramas of so many sages, and Rama was living it for 10 years by shuttling between these asramas. And now this is where the toughest part comes, when you try to locate the Panchavati. So when you look at the distances, like there are two traditionally identified locations for Panchavati, which is very popular, very famous. Anybody you ask where is Panchavati, they say Nasik, or some others people say it is Bhadrachalam, Parnashala in Bhadrachalam. But both the distances, when I analyzed, I could not see any kind of correlation between these two distances, these locations, because the distance is not matching, direction is not matching. Because in the Ramayana, Rama, after meeting Agastya, he asked, where should I establish my asrama? Then Agastya pointed, like, you go northwards. So Agastya is basically hinting him to go back to the Asrama Mandala, which is in the north of the Agastya Asrama. So Agastya Asrama you can see in this map. So he was asked to go northwards. not to the south. This is one important point which is very clearly mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana. But because of the traditional dominance, that is, people normally traditionally believe that Panchavadi is in Nasik or Bhadrachalam, they just ignore this particular important data. So Agastya is very clear, go to north. So Agastya was asking Rama, go northwards. Then finally you reach a place, a very good place, that place you can establish your ashrama. So I have looked, so now I'm looking at the exact words and location, direction mentioned by Agastya, including Yojana, 2 Yojana, like that, everything is mentioned. So I have identified Panchavadi on the banks of the same Tamasa river. And of course, another name for this Tamasa river was the Godavari river. So that is why Agastya is mentioning go to the Godavari. So Godavari basically it means a river were rich in the cows. And why the river was rich in cows? Because this entire river bank rishis were living, maharshis were living, and they, for their sustenance, they have cow sheds, gotra. So the Asama Mandala is that place. Now all the maharshis like Sudikshna. Sudikshna is in the one end of this particular Tamasa river. Valmiki is on the other end of the Tamasa river. So other maharshis are living in between. So all the maharshis, all their asramas are on this river. Their goshalas, everything is on this river. So that is why it is called Godavari. So Godavari in the Aranyakanda of Ramayana is a synonymous to Tamasa river, where the Valmiki was living, Sudikshna was living. So Rama was just establishing his own asrama in the same Godavari river. It makes a lot of sense because he was living with the maharshis. He was lived there for 10 years. So definitely he want to continue live there. So that is what the most important clinching point in my book. And it's not ends. It doesn't end there because there is in the place where Maricha is actually asking Maricha and Ravana was. They very clearly mentioned they were going to Asrama Mandala. That is for abducting Sita, they were going to Asrama Mandala. So there is absolutely no ambiguity that Rama was living in the Asrama Mandala, and Asrama Mandala very unambiguously mentioned as on the banks of this river inside the Dandakaranya. So all these things are the match up actually. So now you have the first shocking or change in the understanding of location of Panchavadi. So then naturally we will just think about where is Lanka and all. So the Lanka's definition is it is in the Southern Ocean. So not automatically today in 21st century, when you say Southern Ocean, automatically you think about Kanyakumari and the ocean south of it. But that is not the case during Rama's period because they were just exploring up to the northern India region, the entire Indo-Gangetic people, the Harappan people or Indo-Gangetic. All these people were exploring things in the south. The maximum they know Vindhya mountains, and they know the very very rare people know the Narmada river as a southern boundary of the non-universe or the non-regions for them. So the Southern Ocean basically is the ocean where Saraswati and Sindhu drains. That is the Gujarat Peninsular Ocean, and to extension the Gulf of Gujarat, the Gulf of Cambay, Gulf of Gran of Kutch. So Gulf of Cambay is also the Southern Ocean. So and another point is the ancestors of Ravana, they were all married the children of Narmada. So that is another geographical clue that the Rakshasa, that is a domain, they were on the on the banks of Narmada. So when we look at it, I have identified Lanka as an island on the mouth of the Narmada river in the Southern Ocean. So that is matching almost everything 100% match with the Ramayana description. And if you locate there, then a lot of things fall in place because Ravana was fighting with Kartavya Arjuna at Mahishmati. You can see Mahishmati or Maheshwar is very close to where I am identify Lanka. And you can also see one of the Bhargava was a priest of Indrajit. And Bhargavas have a dominant place called Brigukaksha, that is Baroch, which is again close to this region. So a lot of things are adding up. So, and another thing, yeah, maybe this is slight diversion. So from Lanka, Ravana is moving southwards. So there is a kind of doubt how south he went. Because Rama don't know about southern geographies, but Ravana need not have the same ignorance. So he moves southwards, and I identified somewhat in the border of Gujarat and Maharashtra, the Marija's location. And there is also this IVC sites, Indus, Sindhu Saraswati, Narmada civilization sites in this region, which are actually 1900 BC. So archaeologically, it's very accurate. And there is another, these are all some other important interest, like Dantakaranya eastern extension. So there are two theories I have put in the book. One is a very short in the inside, completely in Madhya Pradesh, and another possibility is Dantakaranya extending to the Bihar, to include the Tadaka location, etc. So yeah, so this is what, and then after Ravana met the Maricha, they were traveling to abduct this Sita. They very clearly say we will go to Asrama Mandala. So after reaching Asrama Mandala, he abducted the Sita from the Panchavadi. So it's all very clear. And here actually I've shown the movement of Rama when he goes to meet Kabantha. And from there, again, Kabantha was the person who gave the direction to Rama. And this is also very clear. Kabantha asked to meet Sugriva, that is a Vanara kingdom, to the west. Go westward. After meeting Kabantha, they have to go westward. And if you identify Panchavadi as Nasik, if you go westward, you reach Mumbai and Arabian Sea. So Nasik is cannot be matching with the description in the Ramayana. So, but in whatever I have identified Panchavadi as one of the asrama in the Asrama Mandala on the Satna River, you go a little bit southward to reach Kabanda, because there it is mentioned until reaching Kabanda, Rama is moving southwards. From there, Kabanda said go westward. So if you go westward, you reach the correct location of the Vanara territory. So this is like the region of Bhimbetka. That is where we reach the territory. It's on the Vindhya mountains. So Vanaras also in Ramayana, multiple places the Vanaras are mentioned as living on Vindhya mountains. Again, this is also ignored by many people. So I get very clearly Kishkinda is located exactly on the Vindhya mountains. So in the Bhimbetka region. And it is also between, if you look at move from southwestern direction from Panchavadi to Lanka, if you draw a line in southwestern line, you see Kishkinda is in the middle. The Kishkinda will be in between Lanka and Panchavadi. And this positioning is very important because when Sita was abducted, she was able to throw her ornaments so that the Vanaras will get it. So if this is an important information, this will not work in any other identified locations of Kishkinda and Panchavadi. Like so many locations of Kishkinda, like Hampi in Karnataka, and then Tirumala Hills in Andhra Pradesh, and Sri Lanka as Lanka, and Panchavadi as Bhadrachalam and Nasik. You put any combination, this will not work. This particular information that Sita is traveling through the Vanara territories before reaching Lanka, so that she could exchange the ornaments. This will not take place. This will not be fulfilled. So that is one other evidence for corroborating whatever my findings are there. So this is the Kishkinda domains. So I was able to locate Sugriva's location, Kishkinda city, the Bhimbetka cave network, then Bandarban Ghat, where the exchange of ornaments take place, and waterfalls. Prasravana is a Sanskrit name for waterfall. So there are waterfalls in the southern slope of India. So many hundreds of waterfalls in the southern slope of India. And then you have Dundubi, that is the enemy territory of the Bali and Sugriva. So Dundubi, that is the domain is located Dunduani. Then Rishyamukha, then the Matanga Saras, Pampa River. All these things are very clearly locatable in this particular region. And then this is another. This is kind of thing. One of the things which got confused a lot of researchers, because there are 4 sargas in the Valmiki Ramayana, Kanda, 39, 40, 41, and 42, which is mentioning places where Sita is to be searched. This is not the place where actually Sita is searched. Sugriva is just mentioning that these are the places you can go and search. But there is no evidence in Ramayana that the Vanaras actually went there. It is just an instruction for the Vanaras to go and search. And this entire 4 sargas are late addition. For example, Sarga 39 talks about eastern locations, and when I trace it goes to Indonesia. Sarga 40 talks about southern location, it reach up to Kerala, and 41 reach westward up to Pakistan, and Sarga 42 northward up to Siberia. But it's a very much large territory, but unfortunately this entire sargas, 4 of the sargas are late sargas, because all the locations are mentioned in a haphazard way without any proper sequence or anything. And even some absurd thing like Sugriva is asking them to search in Videha and Ayodhya, Kosala, everything. So these are all territories native to Rama and Sita. So there is no logical reason why they have to search these places. If you go and search there, automatically it's not like a historical fact, right? Basically, so it's a kind of absurd suggestions, and the locations also very much kind of like some later traveler traveled and then they have put it that kind of locations. So that is why you see Indonesia locations are mentioned. So because in the starting with 3rd century BC, there was a lot of expedition to Indonesia from Cholas and from Vangadesha, Orissa, etc. So because of that, a lot of geographical information of Indonesia is obtained in the late century, 2nd century to 2nd century AD, that period. So those are getting captured into Ramayana. Similarly, the southern places, it is mentioning this Cholagera Pandya. But the oldest record we have for these places is in Ashokan inscriptions, which is 3rd century BC. And in literature, we have is the Aitareya Brahmana, which have a similar kind of lot of additions from the Puranic period. So we cannot use those as the reference for the oldest mention of the Chola Pandya Kerala. They have to be based on the archaeological evidence or some secondary sources to corroborate and accurately say that these are older. But even otherwise, the knowledge about any place southern to Narmada is very, very feeble in Ramayana. So there is a very high knowledge of anything northern to Narmada, but feeble knowledge about anything to the south. And there are certain places, very interesting places. Even though it is later addition, it is very important for our history because it mentioned about the Pandya Kavada, that is an important like a historical seaport, Korke, and also Marichipatana, Musiris. So these are all like very important. And using this Ramayana data, I can increase the antiquity of these places because many of these leftist historians are diluting the ancientness, but will be able to actually increase the ancientness of these locations using these studies. And then there is a poetic Lanka, which is mentioned as in the Kanyakumari region. So maybe to the lack of time, I am not. The book has very clearly mentioned that how it is geographically very much closer to description, but it is a kind of a later modification that has been brought into the later version or later evolution of the Ramayana. So the details are very elaborate, so I cannot completely delve into it. But you can read the book for more information about it. And then in the western region, where because there is a big barrier, the western mountains of Pakistan, so they didn't go beyond the Pakistan region there. But in the north, they have crossed because of maybe extensive travel into the Siberian region. So those information are captured in Ramayana, including the vast, this very vast desert in the northern region that is identified with Taklamakan Desert in the Tibetan Chinese region. But so all this, the 4 sargas are later, and only in the next sarga, the actual travel of Angada, Jambavan, and Hanuman start. And that is where we are getting, because we may be expecting, okay, they were traveling to Indonesia, southern direction, means they will be traveling to Kerala or Tamil Nadu, Pandya, Chola, Kerala. No, they were not going anywhere. All this, so many sargas, around 7-8 sargas are counted. It's all talking about Vindhya mountains only. So their entire search was confined within the Vindhya mountains, and they were not going anywhere. So that is the trace I have put, like from Kishkinda, that is on the right hand side. They were traveling this Vindhya along Vindhya mountains, around 7-8 sagas continuously. They're talking about Vindhya. Then they reach a forest of Kandu, that is I considered as Bihar, this is Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh border. Then the Maya location of Maya, Mahabalam, and the end of India. Anybody you can look at geography. The Vindhya mountain end in Gujarat, somewhere in the middle of the southern Gujarat. So that is the Vindhya mountain end, and from there ocean is very near. So then my location of Lanka is here in the mouth of Narmada. So they reached the end of Vindhya mountain and then moved to the ocean, and then they were trying to cross the ocean to reach Lanka. So that ocean is very small here. Like you can see, it's a kind of very small distance. And Yojana, like there is two Yojanas. One is smaller Yojana and one is bigger Yojana. So smaller Yojana is 120 meters and 100 Yojana is 12 kilometers. And the 12 kilometer matches perfectly with the width of the Narmada river, so that they can reach the Lanka island inside the mouth of Narmada. So that is the thing. And then now the more details about Lanka, true location of Lanka. So I have mentioned it's the mouth of Narmada. So you can see why the Ramasetu or the Sri Lanka has a problem. Even if nobody considers my location of Lanka as the correct one, still in the Ramayana you have verses which says Hanuman traveling southwards to reach Lanka. So there is a Mahendragiri, that is as per some identify Mahendragiri with actually this southern mountain in Kanyakumari district. So from here he moved southwards. So because he is moving southwards, there is no way Lanka is Sri Lanka, even if you ignore whatever I have mentioned. So the Sri Lanka is completely ruled out as the Lanka of Ravana. Even if you don't consider that other part, like I mentioned, that Rama didn't travel southwards from Narmada. Lanka is in on the mouth of Narmada. Ignore all of this. Still, Sri Lanka cannot be Lanka because Hanuman's travel clearly mentioned from Mahendragiri he moved southwards. But actual Mahendragiri, it is the Mahendra mountains in Orissa, which is the real Mahendragiri support. And then here actually you can see it's a comparison of the Lanka in the river mouth of Narmada versus the Kanyakumari district Lanka, how it matches, etc. That is I have shown. And because I have considered for some part that Lanka can be located in the Kanyakumari also, but there are, because of some problems, I cannot continue with that identification, and I have considered it as a later evolution. And then he can see the Lanka in two different geographies between this, like the original Lanka versus the later changes happened. So there is a possible locations I have mapped in the Sri Lanka itself, but none of them become significant because I cannot identify Lanka with Sri Lanka. Again, there is a lot of mention in the Ramayana where Ravana could actually see the Vanaras on the seashore by looking from his palace. So in the actual Lanka, you typically locate the Sri Lanka, you locate Ravana's palace as Kandy in the center of Sri Lanka. From there, nobody can look into the seashore because it's too far away, kilometers and kilometers far away. Like, so this kind of references will make sense only in a very small island of some 100 less than some 5 kilometer in distance. Beyond 5 kilometers, people cannot see anything. Even if you are on the top of a mountain, it is difficult to see anything beyond 5 kilometers. This also indicates that is a very small island, not a big island like Sri Lanka. Lanka is not a big island like Sri Lanka. So then this is a map which the Ramasetu is correctly called Nalasetu in the Ramayana. Then it never uses the word Ramasetu in Ramayana anywhere. So Nalasetu. So Nalasetu, if you look at in the Narmada mouth, it makes very big good sense. But directions and distance, everything matches in the Narmada mouth. But in the Ramasetu, that is Sri Lanka, that is Rameshwaram to Sri Lanka, direction is wrong, distance also wrong. And then here this is some places mentioned in Yuddhakanda as a location of the Vanaras. So I plotted if anything is in the southern side, everything is in the north. And then here the Malaya mountain. So the poet has slightly modified that the Malaya is the kind of turned into Himalaya, etc. So that kind of a twist has happened in the verses. And then here is the return journey of Sri Rama. So if this is also a test for whatever I have mentioned, whether it is correct, I can test in the when the return journey of Ramayana. And I see when I plotted the return journey, everything is matching very perfectly, because if you look at details of the return journey of Sri Rama, there is a slight hint that they alighted in Kishkinda, because all the people from the large number of wanderers, everything. So some of them alighted in Kishkinda, that is very mentioned. So there is a stop at Kishkinda. So if you travel through the Narmada river, you can reach. A river is navigable up to Bandarban Ghat. That is a place where Sita exchanged ornaments to the wanderers. And from there, they can move on foot, etc., and reach very easily within short period all the places they have earlier visited and reach Ayodhya. So that entire thing corroborates the earlier findings. And last, these are the places of Rakshasa. So I have very much extra questions. I plotted all of the locations mentioned in the history of Rakshasas, which is mentioned in Uttarakhanda. Malivad, Mali, Sumali, Malivad, and their ancestors. Everything fall in the north of Narmada. And on the Narmada itself, because their marriage, everything happened in Narmada. So everything is in the north of Narmada. Again, I plotted all the locations related to Ravana. So except one location, Ashmanagara, where some Rama's some relative married, something like that. Every other, and Malvan, that is Malvan is another location, and one more I think I have no mistakenly, the Marija location. So 3 locations, which is south of Narmada. Everything else related to Ravana is in the northern side. And even if you look at today, there are a lot of tribes which claim ancestry from Ravana. They are located in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh region. So this is very clear that Ravana is not a southern Indian personality. So the Dravidian politics can have an end now. So Ravana's Lanka is located on the mouth of Narmada, and all the ancestors of Ravana, even in the past, like Malivat, Sumali, Malyava, and all these people, Pulastya, everybody was in the northern side of Narmada, north of Narmada. And today, so many people, so many clans claiming ancestry of Ravana. They are all in the Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. Some of them don't celebrate the Ramanavami and don't burn the effigy of Ravana. So such people are, such clans, traditional tribes are living in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh as well. So that clarifies everything. And then this is the banishment of Sita. So how she goes to the Valmiki Ashrama, and Sita was there. So this is where Ramayana Kavya is formed in the Valmiki Ashrama in the Tamasa river bank, where it joins Ganga river. And some conquest mentioned in the Uttarakhanda, like Shatrughna conquering the Mathura. So it was older known as Mathupura, and then it became Mathura. All these things is mentioned in Uttarakhanda. And then Bharata is conquering a Gandharva Desha. So Rigveda mentioned the same place as Gandharva Desha. Ramayana also mentioned it as Gandharva Desha, and in Mahabharata it is called Gandhara. And Uttarakhanda of Ramayana also called Gandhara. So you can see the chronologically how the name changes. And you have many places mentioned in Uttarakhanda I have plotted to see if anything can be realistically put in the south of Narmada. But everything again falls to the north of Narmada river, or places mentioned in Uttarakhanda. And Marubhumi also mentioned in this particular references, that is Tardasat. And then the places where Rama, oh yeah, right. So we know the Ramayana is composed in Valmiki Ashrama, where it is recited. So Rama have done a yajna in the Naimisharanya. This is where the Sita also disappeared, and Lavakusha came here and recited Ramayana. So this will be very much significant, because Mahabharata also recited in Naimisharanya. The Ugrasara of Sauti recited Mahabharata to Shaunaga in Naimisharanya. Lava and Kusha recited the first version of Ramayana in Naimisharanya. So that is a very important place. And some of the some Rigvedic references in the Uttarakhanda is surprisingly I found it about Sudas, the Rigvedic king is mentioned. Of course, claiming that he is an Ikshvaku, etc. And then this is the last part, Ramayana Atlas. This is the cities. So you can see the red color of the new cities. That is sons of Rama, like Sravasti for Lava, Kushavati for Kusha. There are 2 Kushavatis in the north and south, probably because of the branching of the Kusha lineage. Then Chandrakanta for Lakshmana's son. Angadiya, that is Lakshmanpuri, that is Lucknow, another Lakshmana son. Pushkaravata and Takshashila Bharata son in Gandhara. Vidisha and Mathura, Shatrugna sons, two Shatrugna sons ruled in Mathura and Vidisha. So these are all mentioned. And then this is the overall map with rivers. This is atlas of Ramayana based on all the identification. Everything 90% on the north of Narmada, with a few places here and there in the south of Narmada. So that's it. This is the end of my talk.